For this activity, I had my boyfriend catch a ball. Catching a ball and usually throwing it back relates to the leisure aspect of occupations under leisure participation. Catching and throwing a ball additionally relates to social participation. This action involves the upper extremity starting from the shoulder or the glenohumeral joint down to the dips of the fingers. In order to complete this action, 4 phases must occur: the preparatory phase, the movement phase, the follow-through phase, and the recovery phase. Starting with the preparatory phase, Gordon begins to build up force in order to catch the ball. The movement phase consists of when Gordon catches the ball. The acceleration of his fingers flexing allows him to catch the ball thrown. The follow-through phase consists of the deceleration of the movement. No longer does he have to focus on catching the ball, but focus on bringing his arm back down to his side. Gravity assists the movements in the follow-through phase, ensuring that he can return to a comfortable position. Finally, the recovery phase is when Gordon can begin another movement, as he has regained a neutral position in his upper extremities and body. Starting with the preparatory phase, Gordon begins to flex and rotate his head about 10 degrees for both actions, preparing to follow the trajectory of the ball. He begins to flex his shoulder from neutral to around 50 degrees and slightly abducts his shoulder around 20 degrees, allowing for his elbow and hand to be in the correct position to catch the ball. Continuing following the kinematic chain, Gordon flexes his elbow around 90 degrees to set up his hand. His forearm is fully pronated, contributing to his wrist extension of around 25 degrees. Additionally, he has slight ulnar deviation. In the carpometacarpal aspect of his thumb, he palmally abducts around 45 degrees, ensuring that the ball will fit in his hand. Continuing with the thumb, his MCP is extended at 0 degrees, allowing for his hand to act like a mitt. The IP of his thumb is slightly flexed around 5 degrees. Other than the second digit MCP, which is slightly flexed, all other MCPs are extended to 0 when he is anticipating the ball to be thrown. The index finger is also abducted around 10 degrees at the MCP joint. The dip and pip of the index finger are flexed 30 and 40 degrees respectively, continuing the motif of making the hand look more like a mitt. For the middle finger, Gordon flexes his pip 45 degrees and his dip 5 degrees. For his ring finger, the pip is 20 degrees and 30 degrees for his dip. Finally, his whole pinky finger extends, preparing him to flex once the ball makes contact with his hand. All the while, his left arm remains in a neutral position, with his elbow slightly flexed, forearm slightly pronated, wrist extended and ulnarly deviated, and MCPs, PIPs, and DIPs all slightly flexed. For the movement phase, Gordon will catch the ball. Since his body is already prepared to catch the ball, he only needs to adjust to the trajectory of the ball and flex his fingers. His head flexes slightly more, as well as the rotation of his neck. His shoulder slightly flexes 5 degrees less, and his abduction remains the same. Gordon continues his pronation of his forearm and flexes his elbow 5 degrees less than in the preparatory phase. The extension of his wrist as he catches the ball decreases by 5 degrees, and his wrist remains ulnar deviated at 10 degrees. The CMC of the thumb continues palmar abduction at 45 degrees, MCP extends to 0, and the IP joint of the thumb flexes to adjust the ball's dimensions. All of the MPs of the digits flex to catch the ball, as well as the pips and dips to grasp the ball. For the left upper extremity, when Gordon catches the ball, he abducts slightly to provide balance. His scapula on his right arm additionally protracts to set up the right upper extremity to be in the correct position to catch the ball. His trunk slightly rotates to accommodate for the movements in his right upper extremity, enabling the abduction of his left arm. The follow-through phase relates to Gordon bringing his active arm back down to a neutral position. His left arm continues to remain neutral. Starting with his neck, extension and rotation back to 0 degrees allows for him to readjust to a neutral position of his head and eyesight. His glenohumeral joint extends and adducts back to 0 to bring his arm back down to his side. Keep in mind that gravity ensures ease of these movements. After catching the ball, he continues to keep his arm in a pronated position, slightly going out of and bringing his forearm back into a full pronation at the end. He flexes his elbow more after catching the ball about 15 degrees and then extends fully to 0 degrees. Slight extension, ulnar deviation continues at 10 degrees for his wrist as he must hold on to the ball. At the thumb CMC, there remains palmar abduction as before, and at the MCP, full extension occurs to account for the ball. At the thumb IP, there is flexion to hold on to the ball. All of the other fingers, starting from the MCP going to the pip and dips, are flexed. Flexion at the pips proved to be greatest and the dips the least. Finally, within the recovery phase, his body has returned to a neutral position when holding a ball. His shoulders completely at rest with no flexion or abduction, but his scapula is slightly protracted. His cervical spine additionally has no rotation or flexion, so there are 0 degrees. His elbow is fully extended to 0 degrees as well. His forearm remains in full pronation at 80 degrees, and his wrist continues to be slightly ulnar deviated and extended around 10 degrees. Since the ball is still in his hand, the same degrees and movements in the follow-through phase for his digits continue to the recovery phase. He remains palmally abducted at the CMC of the thumb MCP full extension, flexion at his thumb IP joint, flexion in all of his MCPs, PIPs, and DIPs of his digits 2 through 5, and slight abduction of his index finger at the MCP joint.